Welcome to Final Curiosity. Today's story reveals the impossible truth of an enslaved man who inherited a Gilded Age mansion and dared to challenge America's wealthiest dynasty. What unfolded defied the laws of his era, threatened an empire built on power and silence, and exposed a secret the system was never designed to face. This account is heavy and intense. Pause for a moment, breathe, and listen closely. Before we start, subscribe to the channel and comment below with your city and country. Your engagement helps ensure these stories are remembered, not buried. Stay until the end. This story forces a question history still refuses to answer. Let's begin. In the fall of 1891, a black man walked through the gardens of one of America's most expensive mansions. He wore a tailored suit worth more than most workers earned in a year. His shoes were polished. His posture was perfect. When armed guards surrounded him with weapons drawn, he did not run. He did not beg. He simply smiled and spoke 7 words that would change everything. "Tell Theodore that Bessie's son came home." The guards froze. Patrick O'Brien, head of security for the Harrington family for 15 years, felt his blood turn cold. He had heard that name before. Bessie. It was a name never spoken inside the mansion. A ghost's name, one the Harringtons had paid heavily to erase from history. By the time O'Brien recovered enough to ask the stranger's name, the man had vanished into the night. He left no trace, no footprints, no evidence he had ever been there. But inside Rosacliff Manor, behind marble walls and golden chandeliers, panic had already begun to spread. Who was this man? Where did he come from? And what did he know about Bessie? This is the true story of Solomon Graves. A man born into slavery who died a millionaire. A man who spent 30 years plotting the destruction of one of America's most powerful families. A man who proved that revenge, served cold enough, can burn hotter than any fire. But to understand how Solomon Graves brought down the Harrington dynasty, we must go back to the beginning, back to a Georgia cotton plantation, back to the year 1849, back to the night a baby was born in secret, setting in motion a chain of events that would shake the foundations of the Gilded Age. The Magnolia Fields plantation covered 12,000 acres of prime Georgia farmland. It was owned by Augustus Harrington II, heir to a railroad fortune stretching from Savannah to New York. In 1849, Augustus was 32. He had a wife, Helena, from old Charleston money, a 5-year-old son, Edward, a 2-year-old son, Theodore, and 347 enslaved people who worked his cotton fields from sunrise to sunset. Among them was a woman named Bessie. 24 years old, born on the plantation, she had never set foot beyond its borders. Her mother, a field hand, died of fever when Bessie was 9. Her father was unknown, as was true for most of the enslaved, but Bessie was different from other workers at Magnolia Fields. She was beautiful in a way that made people stop and stare. Her skin was the color of honey. Her eyes were large and expressive. At 16, she had been selected to work inside the big house as a domestic servant. Working inside was considered a privilege. Lighter work, better food, fewer beatings. But it came with dangers field hands never faced. Dangers Bessie understood all too well. Augustus Harrington first noticed Bessie on a hot summer evening in 1847 as she served dinner to his guests. She was 22, he was 30. Bored with his fragile wife, who seemed more often ill than well. Bessie's grace and silence, as she moved through the dining room, caught his attention. The way she kept her eyes down, yet saw everything, fascinated him. Within a week, he arranged her transfer to his personal study as a cleaner. Within a month, everyone in the slave quarters knew what happened behind those closed doors. No one spoke aloud, not where they could be heard. But they all knew. The others saw Bessie return late at night, with her dress disheveled and eyes empty. They saw the master send for her whenever his wife visited relatives. They saw, they understood, and they kept silent, because speaking meant death. In the spring of 1849, Bessie realized she was pregnant. She hid it as long as she could, wrapping her belly with cloth, wearing looser dresses, avoiding the mistress at all costs. But by August, she could hide no longer. Her belly was too large, the baby too close. Everyone on the plantation waited to see what would happen. Helena Harrington was no fool. She knew of her husband's visits to the slave quarters. She knew about Bessie. When she saw Bessie's swollen belly, she knew exactly whose child it was. But Helena was also practical. She came from a world where men did as they pleased and wives looked away. A scandal would only hurt her. So she did what women of her class did. She pretended not to see, pretended not to know, and waited for the problem to resolve itself. The baby came on September 15, 1849, in a small cabin at the edge of the slave quarters. An older enslaved woman named Martha, who had delivered over 100 babies in her 60 years, helped Bessie through a difficult labor. Bessie screamed for hours. Others stood outside, listening, praying for mother and child to survive. Just before midnight, a baby boy took his first breath. Bessie held him and cried, not from sadness or joy, but something in between. She knew her son's life, enslaved like her, working the fields like her mother, suffering like everyone she had ever loved. But looking at his face, his tiny fingers, his eyes already hinting at gray, she made a decision. "Your name is Solomon?" she whispered. "And one day, you're going to be free." You old Martha, cleaning after the birth, heard those words. She also noticed something else. The baby's skin was lighter than Bessie's, much lighter. And those gray eyes were not the eyes of an enslaved child. They were the eyes of Augustus Harrington. Martha had been on the plantation 40 years. She had seen things, kept secrets, and knew how to survive. She knew this baby, evidence of the master's sin, was in terrible danger. If Helena Harrington saw the child as a threat to her son's inheritance, she could have him sold or killed with a word. So Martha did something she had never done before. After Bessie fell asleep, exhausted, Martha took a small object from her pocket. A gold medallion she had found years earlier in the master's study, dropped and forgotten behind a bookshelf. Engraved with the initials A.H. for Augustus Harrington, she had kept it hidden, sensing someday it might matter. That night she buried the medallion under an old oak tree at the property's edge, marking the spot with 3 small stones. She made her own decision. If this child ever needed proof of who his father was, the proof would be waiting. Solomon Graves grew up in the shadow of the big house. He lived with his mother in a one-window, one-door cabin with a dirt floor. He ate cornmeal mush for breakfast, beans for dinner. He wore clothes patched and repatched until patches outweighed original fabric. And from age 5, he worked. His first job was carrying water to field hands. He woke before dawn, filled 2 wooden buckets, and walked back and forth across cotton fields until his arms felt ready to fall off. If he spilled water, he was beaten. If he was too slow, he was beaten. If he looked at a white person without lowering his eyes, he was beaten. This was his life, the only life he knew. But Bessie refused to let Solomon's spirit die. Each night after work, she sat with him in their cabin and taught him things forbidden to the enslaved. She taught him to read using a Bible stolen page by page from the big house. She taught him numbers with pebbles and sticks. She taught him of a world beyond the plantation. A world she had never seen, but heard of from others sold and moved from place to place. There's a whole country out there, she would tell him. Cities bigger than anything you can imagine. Places where black people are free, own businesses, wear fine clothes, and no one tells them what to do. Solomon would listen wide-eyed. "Can we go there, Mama?" Bessie would stroke his hair and smile sadly. "Someday, baby, someday." But she knew the truth. There was no escape from magnolia fields. The plantation was surrounded by wilderness. Runaways were hunted with dogs and guns. Those caught were whipped until their backs were raw meat, then put back to work as a warning. Bessie had seen it, heard the screams. Running meant near, certain death. So she did the only thing she could do. She gave her son knowledge, hope, and a secret. When Solomon was 7, Bessie told him the truth about his father. They sat by the creek on a Sunday afternoon, the only time the enslaved were allowed rest. Solomon skipped stones across the water. Bessie watched him, gathering courage. "Solomon, baby, there's something I need to tell you." He looked at her with those gray eyes so like his father's. "What is it, Mama?" She took a deep breath. "You know how other children have fathers living in the quarters with them, how they know who their daddies are." Solomon nodded. He had noticed. He had wondered. But like all enslaved children, he learned some questions were not safe to ask. "Your daddy doesn't live in the quarters, Solomon. Your daddy lives in the big house." The boy was confused. The big house. But only white people live in the big house. Bessie took his small hands. "That's right, baby. Your daddy is a white man. Your daddy is Master Harrington." Solomon was too young to fully understand, but he understood enough. He understood why his skin was lighter than other children's. Why the master sometimes looked at him with half guilt, half something else. Why the mistress stared at him with cold hatred when he came near. He was different. Now he knew why. "Does he know?" Solomon asked. "Does he know I'm his son?" Bessie nodded. "He knows, baby. He knows. Then why doesn't he help us? Why doesn't he set us free?" Bessie pulled him close. "Because that's not how this world works, Solomon. Not for people like us. But someday, baby, things will change. And when they do, I need you to remember who you are. You're not just a slave. You're not just property. You're the son of Augustus Harrington. And one day, they're going to know it." Solomon never forgot those words. They burned into his memory like a brand. Years later, when everything had been taken from him, those words would fuel his resolve. The overseer at Magnolia Fields was Silas Crenshaw, 40, 5 years old, 6 feet tall, with hands like slabs of meat. He had overseen for 20 years in Mississippi, Alabama, and finally Georgia. Known region-wide for breaking any enslaved person, no matter how stubborn, plantation owners paid premium wages for his services. Silas took an immediate dislike to Solomon. It wasn't personal, at first. Silas disliked all the enslaved, considering them animals, less than animals, talking tools with no more value than a plow or mule. But Solomon was different. Solomon looked him in the eye when others looked down. Solomon asked questions when others stayed silent. Solomon had pride, and Silas Crenshaw was very good at destroying pride. The beating started when Solomon was 10. Silas found reasons, invented reasons, to punish the boy. Water brought too slowly, a wrong look at a white visitor, humming while working. Each offense, real or imagined, met with the whip. Scars accumulated on Solomon's back like a map of suffering. By 12, his skin was a patchwork of welts and burns. Each scar had a story, each was a lesson in being property. But Silas never broke Solomon's spirit. No matter the pain, something in Solomon's eyes remained undefeated. A spark, a flame that refused to die. "That boy ain't right," Silas told other white workers. "Got something wrong in his head. Looks at you like he's thinking things, planning things." The others nodded and agreed. Agreeing with Silas was safe. But they all noticed Solomon was not like the others. and that made him dangerous. What none knew was that Silas suspected Solomon's parentage. He had seen the gray eyes, noticed the light skin, heard whispers about Bessie and the master, and pieced it together. If Solomon was Augustus Harrington's son, he was a threat, not to Silas personally, but to the natural order. The idea that an enslaved person could carry his master's blood, be half white, potentially claim connection to the Harringtons, was an abomination. It defied everything Silas believed about racial separation, so he beat Solomon harder, gave him the worst jobs, made his life hell. In Silas's mind, he was doing God's work, putting a mongrel in his place, maintaining the world's proper order. Solomon absorbed every beating, storing each blow, insult, and drop of blood in memory. He did not cry out or beg. He endured, remembered, and waited, because his mother taught him things would change someday. And when that day came, Solomon intended to be ready. The year 1861 changed everything. The Civil War began in April when Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter. Within weeks, the nation was at war. Southern states seceded. Young men marched off to fight, and on plantations across the South, the enslaved began to whisper of something never dared hoped for: freedom. Solomon was 12 when the war started. He didn't fully understand, but grasped enough. People fought over whether slavery should exist. Northern armies wanted to free the enslaved. If the North won, his life would never be the same. War years were hard at Magnolia Fields. Most young white men were gone, leaving the plantation short-staffed. Food grew scarce as the Confederate Army requisitioned supplies. The enslaved worked harder than ever. Silas Crenshaw, too old to fight, grew more brutal with frustration. But there was something else in the air, something the enslaved could feel but not name: hope. The possibility that their world was ending, that someday they might wake up free. Augustus Harrington watched the war with dread. At 50, his health was failing. His railroad empire, once spanning the South, was being destroyed by Union forces. Weekly news told of bridges blown, depots burned, lines cut. His fortune slipped through his fingers like sand. In quiet night hours, Augustus thought of Bessie Solomon, the son he never acknowledged, the weight of his sins. Helena Harrington had died in 1858, finally succumbing to long illness. Augustus had not remarried. His legitimate sons, Edward and Theodore, served in the Confederate Army. Edward a captain, Theodore a lieutenant. They fought to preserve the life their father built, to keep people like Solomon in chains. One spring evening in 1862, Augustus did the unexpected. He called his lawyer to the plantation and dictated a new will. Samuel Whitfield, a nervous man, listened with growing alarm. The will had usual provisions: the plantation to Edward, railroad interests to Theodore, sums to relatives and charities. Then Augustus added a clause that froze Whitfield's pen. I wish to acknowledge my natural son, born to the enslaved woman Bessie in 1849. Upon my death, Solomon is to be freed and granted 50 of zallows and held in trust until he turns 40. Whitfield looked up. Sir, this clause is highly irregular. It could be contested. 'Cause scandal. Augustus waved dismissively. I don't care about scandal. I'm dying. Whitfield, I feel it in my bones. I'll be damned if I face my maker without trying to make things right. But, sir, your legitimate sons will inherit everything else. This is a pittance compared to their share. It's something. An acknowledgement the boy exists, matters, is my blood. Whitfield complied. He wrote Augustus's words, had the document signed and witnessed, and locked it in his office safe. He hoped, for everyone's sake, the will would never see light, that Augustus would recover and change his mind, that the war would end and normalcy return. But things would never be normal again. The night of March 12, 1863, began like any other at Magnolia Fields. The enslaved finished work at sundown, ate meager dinners, and slept. The full moon cast silver light over cotton fields. The air was warm for March, hinting at summer heat. Solomon was 14, tall for his age, with broad shoulders and strong arms from years of labor. He slept in the same cabin as his mother, on a straw mattress more whole than mattress. Crickets chirped outside. Wood smoke hung in the air. He was dreaming when screams started. Solomon's eyes snapped open. Confused, he smelled smoke, fire. He jumped up. His mother's bed was empty. The door stood open, orange light flickered outside. Their cabin was on fire. Solomon ran outside, coughing from smoke filling his lungs. The cabin's front wall was engulfed, flames climbing dry wood like a living thing. And in that inferno, his mother screamed, "Mama!" Solomon ran toward the cabin, but heat drove him back. Flames were too intense. He couldn't see through the firewall.
Mama!
He shielded his face, forced himself closer. Skin blistered, eyes watered. He kept pushing. He had to save her. Then he saw her. Bessie crawled through the doorway, clothes ablaze, skin blackened and peeling. She had dragged herself almost to the threshold before flames overwhelmed her. Her eyes found Solomon through smoke. Her mouth moved, words barely audible over fire's roar. The medallion, Martha. The oak tree. Solomon reached through flames, grabbed her hand, and pulled with all his strength, dragging her out. Her dress fell away in charred pieces. Her hair was gone. Her face was barely recognizable, but she was alive, barely. "Mama, hold on. Please hold on." Bessie's eyes faded. Breath came in short, painful gasps. She had one more thing to say, one more secret. "Avenge our blood." Then she was gone. Solomon held his mother's body in the dirt as fire consumed all they owned. Other enslaved people gathered, watching, unsure what to say or do. Fires happened, people died. It was plantation life. But Solomon knew something others didn't. He had seen something before the fire started, a figure in shadows near their cabin, a white man watching, not helping, not raising alarm, just watching. When the fire started, the figure walked away. Solomon didn't know who the man was. Smoke and darkness hid his features. But he knew one thing: the fire was no accident. Someone had murdered his mother, and Solomon would find them. Days after Bessie's death passed in a blur of grief and rage. Solomon buried his mother in the slave cemetery at the plantation's edge, in an unmarked grave like all others. He had no money for a headstone, no permission for a funeral. He dug a hole, lowered her body, covered it with dirt. The others left him alone. They understood grief. All had lost parents, children, spouses, friends to death, sale, or casual cruelty. Grief was as common as hunger. But Solomon's grief was different. Cold, hard, focused. He spent hours thinking of the figure he'd seen, trying to remember details, piece clues together. The man was tall, wore dark clothes, and stood in a way that seemed familiar. 3 days after the fire, Solomon remembered. Old Martha. His mother's last words mentioned Martha, the oak tree, the medallion. He didn't understand, but Martha might have answers. He found her that evening after work, sitting outside her cabin, smoking a pipe. Martha was over 60 now, ancient by enslaved standards. Her hair was white, her face a network of wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp, still watching, seeing everything. "Miss Martha," Solomon said carefully, "can I talk to you?" Martha looked at him a long moment. She had expected this visit, expected it for 14 years. "Sit down, child." Solomon sat. "Your mama told you about the oak tree, didn't she?" He nodded. Martha took a long drag from her pipe. "I've been keeping something for you, Solomon. Keeping it since the night you were born. I always knew this day would come. I just hoped it wouldn't come so soon." She told him of the medallion, the initials, how she buried it under the oak tree marked by 3 stones. She told of Augustus Harrington, the affair, all she had seen and heard over years. But there's something else, something more important. Inside that medallion, child, there's a key, a tiny key hidden in the back. I don't know what it opens. Never figured it out. But your mama knew. She told me once it was the key to everything. The key to bringing the Harringtons down. Solomon's heart pounded. What does it open? Martha shook her head. I don't know. Your mama never told me. But she said when the time was right, you would know. You would figure it out. How am I supposed to figure it out? I'm just a slave. I can't even leave this plantation. Martha took Solomon's hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. You ain't just a slave, Solomon. You're Augustus Harrington's son. You got his blood in your veins, and one day that blood will mean something. One day, you'll use it to destroy everything he built. As she paused, eyes boring into his. But not yet. You're too young, too weak. If you fight them now, they'll kill you like they killed your mama. You need to wait. Grow strong. Learn everything about them and their world. Then, when you're ready, make them pay. Solomon listened, absorbed it all. In that moment, sitting outside Martha's cabin at sunset over magnolia fields, he made a decision shaping the rest of his life. He would wait, grow strong, learn, and destroy the Harrington family one by one until nothing remained but ashes and memory. The war continued. Union armies pushed deeper south. At Magnolia Fields, things fell apart. Augustus Harrington died in January 1865, months before war's end. His declining health finally gave out. He died in bed, surrounded by servants, not family. His sons still fought, his wife long dead. The son he never acknowledged worked fields, unaware his father had taken his last breath. Augustus's will was read by Samuel Whitfield 3 days after the funeral. Edward and Theodore Harrington, granted emergency leave for their father's burial, sat in the lawyer's office as their inheritance was detailed. Edward received the plantation, Theodore the railroad interests, sums to relatives and charities. All as expected. Then Whitfield read the final clause. I wish to acknowledge my natural son Solomon, born to the enslaved woman Bessie in 1849. The room fell silent. Edward and Theodore looked at each other, faces showing shocked disgust and something elsey fear. This is preposterous, Theodore finally said. Our father would never write such a thing. He was not in his right mind. Whitfield shifted uncomfortably. I assure you, Mr. Harrington, your father was of sound mind when he dictated this will. I witnessed it myself. Then you witnessed a fraud, Edward said, voice cold and controlled. This document is clearly a forgery. Some abolitionist scheme to embarrass our family. Sir, I must protest. You must do nothing. Theodore interrupted. This will is invalid. The clause about the enslaved violates laws regarding property disposition. We will not honor it. Whitfield knew arguing was pointless. He had seen that look in the Harrington brothers' eyes before. The look of men used to getting what they wanted by any means. What do you wish me to do with the document? He asked. Edward and Theodore exchanged a glance. A silent communication passed between them. Destroy it, Edward said. Burn it. Pretend it never existed. And so Samuel Whitfield, lawyer, witness, and coward, did exactly that. He took the will acknowledging Solomon as Augustus's son, the will granting him freedom and 50,000, and burned it in his office fireplace. Ashes floated up the chimney, disappearing into night sky. Solomon, still working fields, never knew how close he came to a different life. The war ended in April 1865. Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. The Confederacy collapsed. Within weeks, Union soldiers arrived at Magnolia Fields, informing the enslaved they were free. Solomon was 15. He had spent his entire life in bondage, never traveling more than a mile from his birthplace. Suddenly, impossibly, he was told he could go anywhere, do anything, be anyone. Others celebrated, sang, danced, hugged, cried tears of joy. For them, this was the moment dreamed of for generations. The day they would finally be treated as human. But Solomon did not celebrate. He stood apart, watching Union soldiers with suspicion. He had learned not to trust white people. He learned freedom could be a trick, a trap, another way to hurt you unexpectedly. And he had unfinished business. Before leaving Magnolia Fields forever, Solomon went to the oak tree Martha described. He dug beneath its roots and found the medallion, tarnished from years in earth, but initials, A.H., still visible. Opening the back, he found the tiny key hidden inside, just as Martha said. Solomon held the key in his palm. This small metal piece connected to his mother's death, to the Harringtons, to a secret someone killed to protect. He didn't know what it opened or how to find out, but he promised himself and his mother's memory. He would discover the truth, use it to destroy the Harringtons, and make them suffer as they made his mother suffer. With the medallion around his neck and key in pocket, Solomon Graves walked off Magnolia Fields Plantation for the first and last time. He did not look back. He did not say goodbye. He simply walked north toward an unimaginable future, carrying the past like a weight. He was 15, owning nothing but clothes on his back, knowing no one outside the plantation. He was going to war, a war lasting 30 years, a war he intended to win. Post-war years were brutal for freed people. Freedom wasn't safety, food, or shelter. Across the South, millions of black men, women, and children found themselves released from bondage, but abandoned to a hostile world, wanting them dead. Solomon Graves walked north with nothing but determination. He traveled at night to avoid white bands, hunting freed people for sport. He ate what he could find, berries, roots, animals caught barehanded. He slept in ditches and abandoned barns, always with one eye open, ready to run. 3 weeks later, he reached Savannah. The city was chaos. Union soldiers patrolled streets. Freed people crowded makeshift camps, waiting for help never coming. Disease spread like wildfire. Cholera, typhoid, starvation killing daily. Solomon didn't stay in camps. He had seen enough death. He wanted life. He found work at Savannah docks, loading and unloading ships 12 hours a day. Pay was terrible, cents per day, but more money than he'd ever seen. He saved every penny, ate cheapest food, slept in a warehouse corner on a rope pile. Each night before sleep, he took out the medallion, looked at the hidden key. He didn't know what it opened or how to find out, but knew someday he would discover the truth. 5 years passed. Solomon learned to read properly. He found a black church offering evening classes. An old preacher, Reverend Thomas, taught him to read Bible, Shakespeare, newspapers, legal documents. Solomon absorbed knowledge like a sponge. Hungry, desperate for it. He understood knowledge was power, and power was what he needed to destroy the Harringtons. He also learned business. Working docks, he watched money move. How ships brought goods from one place, sold in another. How white men got rich buying low, selling high, while black men did all work for nothing. By 1870, Solomon saved enough for his first investment, a small share in a coal shipment to Baltimore. The investment was risky. If the ship sank, he lost everything. But the ship arrived safely. Solomon's tiny investment doubled. He reinvested profits, doubled again. This began Solomon's transformation from former enslaved to something the world had never seen. A black man with money, a black man with power, a black man using that power to burn down everything the Harringtons built. Solomon moved to Baltimore in 1870. At 21, he had nearly $4,000 saved, an enormous sum for a black man then. But he knew $4,000 was nothing compared to Harrington's wealth, nothing compared to what he needed to destroy them. So he kept working, saving, investing. His first year in Baltimore, he changed his name. Solomon Graves was a slave name, a name marking him as property, a chain following him through life. He needed a new name belonging to a free man, commanding respect. He chose Samuel Grayson, no particular meaning. He liked the sound. Samuel was biblical, strong, dignified. Grayson reminded him of his gray eyes, marking him as Augustus Harrington's son. Together, they created a new identity, a blank slate, a man with no past and unlimited future. Samuel Grayson began building his empire. He started with coal, the same coal powering Harrington railroads. There was irony in that, and Solomon appreciated irony. Every ton of coal sold was another brick in his wall, another weapon in his arsenal. He bought shares in coal mines, ships to transport coal, warehouses to store coal. Within 5 years, he controlled significant mid-Atlantic coal trade. Within 10, he was among the largest East Coast coal merchants. But he didn't stop. He invested in steel, shipping, real estate, bought buildings in Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York. He hired white lawyers unaware their employer was a former enslaved man to manage his affairs. He created a network of companies and trusts, hiding his true identity behind paperwork layers. To the outside world, Samuel Grayson was mysterious. Some said he was from Brazil, others the Caribbean. A few whispered he had mixed blood, that one parent was white. But no one knew the truth. No one suspected Samuel Grayson was once Solomon Graves, an enslaved boy from a Georgia plantation. That was exactly how Solomon wanted it. Through all years building his fortune, Solomon never forgot his mission. He gathered Harrington family information like a general gathering intelligence before battle. He learned Edward Harrington died in 1878, officially a hunting accident. Edward was out with Theodore when his gun accidentally discharged, but killing him instantly. But Solomon didn't believe in accidents, not with Harringtons involved. He hired private investigators, bribed servants and former employees, pieced together what really happened that day in woods. The truth was ugly but unsurprising. Edward and Theodore had fought for years over family business direction. Edward wanted modernization, new technologies, better worker treatment. Theodore wanted to squeeze every penny from existing operations, regardless of cost. The brothers hated each other with familial intensity. Then, on a Virginia mountains hunting trip, Edward's gun accidentally discharged point blank, blowing half his head off. Theodore was the only witness. Theodore brought the body back, arranged the funeral, inherited everything, took control of Harrington Empire. Solomon recognized murder. Theodore killed his own brother to become sole heir, and got away with it because he was rich, white, and powerful. The discovery didn't surprise or anger Solomon. It confirmed what he already knew. Harringtons were monsters, destroying anyone in their way, even their own blood. Solomon would have to be very careful. By 1885, Solomon was 46, worth several $1 million. He had spent 2 decades building fortune and gathering information. He knew almost everything about the Harringtons. Theodore's fratricide, family history of fraud and bribery, dozens of workers dead in their mines and on railroads. Deaths covered up, families paid off with pocket change. But he still didn't know what the key opened. The tiny key from the medallion haunted him over 20 years. He tried hundreds, thousands of locks with possible Harrington connections. Nothing worked. The key remained a mystery, without knowing what it opened. Solomon felt he missed the puzzle's final piece. Then, summer 1886, a woman came to see him, Josephine Dequa, 50, elegant, well-dressed and black. She had been enslaved at Magnolia Fields, a seamstress in the big house. She knew Bessie, knew Solomon as a child, spent 20 post-war years building a new life in Boston, running a successful dress shop for wealthy white women. Josephine tracked Solomon through his business network. It took months to penetrate his secrecy layers, but she was persistent and had information she knew he wanted. "I know what that key opens," she said. They sat in Solomon's private Baltimore office. Door locked, windows closed, servants dismissed. Whatever Josephine had to say, he wanted no witnesses. "Tell me," he said. Josephine leaned forward. "There's a hidden compartment in Augustus Harrington's study, a safe built into the wall behind a painting. Only the family knows. I found out mending curtains one day, saw Theodore opening it. He didn't know I was there." Solomon's heart pounded. "What's inside the safe?" "A book. A black leather book. Theodore calls it the family's insurance policy. It contains records of every Harrington crime. Bribes, murders, fraud, everything. Augustus started keeping it decades ago as protection. If he went down, he wanted to take everyone with him. And the key." Josephine smiled. "The safe has 2 locks. One is a combination lock only Theodore knows. The other is a key lock, an unusual tiny mechanism Augustus designed himself." She pointed at Solomon's chest, where the medallion hung beneath his shirt. "That key is the only one of its kind. Augustus gave it to your mother, probably as a twisted love token. He never imagined she'd keep it, pass it to her son. Certainly never imagined her son would return to claim what's his." Solomon sat silent a long moment. Everything fell into place: the key, the safe, the book. After over 20 years searching, he finally understood what his mother knew, what she died for. The black book was the weapon he needed, proof of all Harrington crimes. With it, he could destroy them, expose their crimes to the world, make them pay for his mother's murder. But there was a problem. "The safe has 2 locks," he said. "I have the key, but not the combination." Josephine nodded. "That's why I came. I don't know the combination either, but I know someone who might. Someone who hates Theodore Harrington almost as much as you do." Woo. His wife, Catherine. Catherine Harrington was daughter of Boston shipping magnate William Ashford. She married Theodore in 1875 at 19. He was 32. An arranged marriage merging 2 powerful families, creating a stronger business alliance. Outwardly, Catherine appeared the perfect wife. Hosted parties, organized charities, smiled, nodded, said all right things. But behind closed doors, her life was a nightmare. Theodore was cruel. As a child torturing animals, bullying servants. As a young man using family money to escape violence consequences. As a husband treating Catherine like property, not partner. He controlled her life, what to wear, who to speak to, when to leave the house. He hit her when she disobeyed, carefully where bruises wouldn't show. He reminded her constantly she was nothing without him. Her family's fortune depended on his goodwill. If she ever left, he would destroy everyone she loved. Catherine endured 18 years of this. She endured because she had no choice. Society offered no protection for abused wives. Divorce was worse than death for women of her class. But deep beneath smiles, parties, and perfect facade, Catherine Harrington built her own fire. Hatred and resentment waiting to explode. Solomon would give her that moment. The plan came together over following months. Josephine served as intermediary between Solomon and Catherine. The 2 women met years earlier at a charity event, maintained secret friendship since. Catherine trusted Josephine when Josephine told her of Solomon, his true identity, his plan to destroy Theodore. Catherine was ready to help. She provided mansion layout information, Theodore's schedule details, names of bribable servants, avoidable guards. But she couldn't provide the safe combination. Theodore has never told me, she explained in a letter Josephine delivered to Solomon. He keeps it locked in memory, but I believe I know someone who might know. His mother, Edith. Edith Harrington was Augustus's second wife, married in 1859 after Helena's death, more for companionship than love. Now 81, frail, largely confined to Rosacliffe Manor rooms. Theodore kept her around because disposing of her would look bad, but paid her no attention, assumed she was senile. He was wrong. Edith had watched, listened, remembered for decades. She observed her husband and stepson's crimes, kept silent from fear. Now, at life's end, she was tired of fear. She wanted to see justice before dying, willing to help Solomon make it happen. Catherine arranged a meeting. Solomon arrived at Rosacliffe Manor on a late September 1891 night, entering through servants' entrance, dressed as a delivery man. Catherine met him, led him through back passages and hidden stairways to Edith's private rooms. The old woman waited. Edith Harrington was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, white-haired, skin like paper. But her eyes were sharp, clear, intelligent. She looked at Solomon a long moment, studying his face, eyes, jaw shape. "You have Augustus's eyes," she finally said. "I noticed it the moment I first saw you at last month's charity ball. Those gray eyes. I spent 40 years looking at those eyes. I'd know them anywhere." Solomon sat in a chair Catherine offered. "You know who I am." "I know exactly who you are. You're the son he never acknowledged. The child he was too cowardly to claim. The reminder of his sins he tried to burn away." Solomon's body went rigid. "What do you know about the fire?" Edith's face twisted with old pain. "I know everything. I was there that night. Not at the cabin, but in the big house. I saw Theodore talking to Silas Crenshaw earlier that evening. I saw money change hands. And I saw Theodore watching from his window when flames started." The world seemed to stop. Solomon always suspected his mother's death was murder, but couldn't prove it, never knew who was responsible. Now he knew. "Theodore killed my mother." Edith nodded slowly. "He was afraid. His father had been talking of changing the will, acknowledging you. Theodore couldn't allow that. Couldn't risk sharing inheritance with a slave's son. So he paid Crenshaw to start the fire, eliminate the threat." Solomon's hands shook, not from fear, from rage, pure white, hot rage buried 30 years. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you stop him?" Why did its eyes filled with tears? "Because I was a coward. Afraid of what Theodore would do to me. I told myself it wasn't my business, that slaves died all the time. One more death didn't matter." She reached out, took Solomon's hand. "I was wrong. I've spent 40 years knowing I was wrong, and I want to make it right before I die." She reached into her dress, pulled out a folded paper. "This is the safe combination. I watched Augustus open it 100 times, memorized numbers without him knowing." Solomon took the paper with trembling fingers. "There's more," Edith continued. "Inside the safe. With the black book, there's something else. A document Augustus wrote before dying. A second will. A second will. The first will acknowledging you was destroyed by Samuel Whitfield after Augustus died. Theodore and Edward forced him to burn it. But Augustus didn't trust Whitfield. He made a copy himself, hid it in the safe, a copy nobody knows about except me." Solomon barely breathed. "Are you saying there's legal proof I'm Augustus Harrington's son? That I was supposed to inherit?" Edith nodded. "The will specifies you're entitled to half of all Harrington assets. It also specifies you must claim inheritance by your 40th birthday, or the provision becomes void." Solomon's heart sank. "I'm 42. Yes, The legal deadline passed. You cannot claim inheritance through courts. Edith squeezed his hand. But the will still proves who you are. It proves Augustus acknowledged you as his son. Combined with the Black Book, it proves Theodore killed your mother to prevent you claiming what was rightfully yours. Solomon understood. The legal battle was lost, but the court of public opinion remained open. If he exposed Harrington crimes, showed the world what they'd done, he could destroy them as completely as any lawsuit, maybe more. There's one more thing, Edith said. I need you to promise me something. Of what? My granddaughter Lily, she's 17. The only innocent in this family. Theodore plans to marry her off to a business associate, a horrible man thrice her age. I need you to protect her. When you bring down the Harringtons, ensure Lily escapes. Can you promise that? Solomon looked into the old woman's eyes, saw something unexpected. Love, genuine love for her granddaughter, the only pure thing left in this monster family. I promise, he said. Edith smiled, her first real smile in years. Then go. Take the combination, find the book, and burn them all to the ground. The plan was set for the Harrington Autumn Ball, October 2, 1891. Newport season's biggest social event. 500 guests, America's elite, newspaper reporters from every major publication. The perfect stage for Solomon's revelation. But Theodore Harrington was no fool. He survived by being paranoid, trusting no one, eliminating threats before they grew. He noticed something wrong. A stranger in Newport, a wealthy black man named Samuel Grayson, appearing out of nowhere, asking too many questions, seemingly everywhere the Harringtons were. Theodore hired Detective Malcolm Vance, ex-Pinkerton, one of the best. Expensive and effective. Within 2 weeks, Vance uncovered the truth. Samuel Grayson didn't exist before 1870. His entire identity was fabrication. Beneath it was a former Magnolia Fields enslaved man named Solomon Graves. Theodore received the report September 28, 4 days before the ball. He acted immediately. That night, armed men broke into Solomon's rented mansion, beat him, dragged him to a Newport docks warehouse, tied him to a chair, waited for their employer. Theodore Harrington walked into the warehouse just after midnight, dressed in evening clothes from a dinner party. Eyes cold, smile cruel. So you're the bastard, he said, circling Solomon's chair. The slave son my father liked to visit. I thought you died in the fire with your mother. Solomon's face was bloody, ribs cracked, but voice steady. Sorry to disappoint you. Theodore laughed unpleasantly. You've caused me trouble, Solomon. Worry. All these years, I thought the problem solved. Thought Crenshaw took care of everything. But here you are, a cockroach refusing to die. You admit it. Then, you ordered the fire. You killed my mother. Theodore shrugged. She was a slave. A threat. What difference now? No one will believe a Negro's word over a Harrington's. No court would take your testimony over mine. He leaned close to Solomon's face. You've lost. Whatever you planned, whatever you thought you'd accomplish, it's over. You'll disappear tonight, like your mother should have 30 years ago. He turned to his men. Kill him. Dump the body in the harbor. Ensure it's never found. Solomon closed his eyes. He had come so close to justice, revenge. Now it would end in a dirty warehouse at hired thugs' hands, no one ever knowing what happened. He thought of his mother, her face in firelight, her last words, "Avenge our blood." He had failed her. Then shooting started. The first bullet hit the man closest to Solomon. He dropped silently. The second hit another man in the shoulder, spinning him. The third went through the warehouse window, missing Theodore by inches. Theodore dove behind crates. His remaining men scattered, drawing weapons, seeking the attack's source. More shots, screams, bodies falling. Then a woman's voice, clear and commanding, "Solomon, can you move?" Solomon opened his eyes. In the warehouse doorway stood Catherine Harrington, holding a smoking revolver. She wore a simple dark dress, hair loose around shoulders, face pale but determined, gun pointed at her husband's hiding spot. "Catherine." Theodore's voice was incredulous. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done years ago." She fired another shot, splintering the crate near his head. "Stay down, Theodore. The next one won't miss." She ran to Solomon, cut his ropes with a knife. "Can you walk?" "I think so." His legs shook but held. "Then we need to move." "More of his men are coming." They fled into night. Behind them, Theodore screamed for guards. Torches lit, dogs released. The hunt was on. Catherine led Solomon through back alleys and hidden paths memorized during years as Theodore's prisoner. She knew every Newport shadow, hiding place, route avoiding main streets. By dawn, they were safe in a small outskirts cottage, Josephine, rented under a false name, stocked with supplies, ready for this emergency. Solomon collapsed on a bed, body screaming with pain. Catherine cleaned his wounds with water and cloth, efficiency of someone who had treated injuries before. "How did you know?" Solomon asked. "How did you know where to find me?" Lily heard Theodore giving orders to his men. "She came to me immediately. She's a good girl. Braver than anyone credits. Theodore will know you helped me. He'll come for you." Catherine's jaw tightened. "Let him come. I'm done being afraid of him. Done being his prisoner." She finished bandaging, sat back. "The ball is in 4 days. Can you still do it? Can you still expose him?" Solomon thought of the combination in his pocket, the safe, the black book, the second will. Everything he needed still waited inside Rosacliff Manor. "Yes," he said. "I can still do it, but I'll need help getting inside." Catherine nodded. "You'll have it. Lily and I will ensure every door is open." For the first time in days, Solomon allowed himself hope. The plan was damaged but not destroyed. Theodore thought him dead. That gave Solomon advantage, surprise opportunity. The ball was in 4 days, and Solomon intended to give Newport an unforgettable night. October 2, 1891. Rosacliff Manor blazed with light. Every window glowed. Every chandelier sparkled. Music and laughter drifted across manicured grounds on cool, autumn breeze. 500 of America's most powerful gathered for the Harrington Autumn Ball. Bankers, industrialists, politicians, newspaper publishers, society matrons dripping diamonds, young men in perfect suits. Gilded Age elite assembled to celebrate wealth, power, everything money could buy. Theodore Harrington stood center, accepting congratulations, shaking hands. He had recovered from events 4 nights earlier. His men found no harbor body, but also no Solomon trace. Theodore convinced himself the problem was solved. Solomon had fled. He was safe. He was wrong. Solomon Graves entered Rosacliff Manor through servant's entrance at exactly 900 p.m., disguised as a waiter in the same simple uniform as dozens of other black servants, moving invisibly through the crowd. No one looked twice. No one asked his name. He was invisible. Another Negro carrying a tray. He moved through service corridors, following Catherine's mapped route, past kitchens, past wine cellar, up a narrow staircase to family private rooms. The study door was unlocked, as Catherine promised. Solomon slipped inside, closed the door behind him. The room was dark, lit only by moonlight through tall windows. Music from the ballroom below muffled through thick walls and heavy carpets. The painting was exactly where Josephine described. A portrait of Augustus Harrington, in his prime above the fireplace. Solomon lifted it from the wall, found the safe behind it. 2 locks, 1 combination, 1 key. Fingers trembling, he entered Edith's numbers. 3 turns right, 2 left, 1 right. Click. He pulled the medallion from his neck, inserted the tiny key into the second lock. It fit perfectly. He turned it. Click. The safe swung open. Inside, Solomon found exactly what Edith promised: the black leather book, a stack of yellowed documents, and a single sheet of paper with faded handwriting Solomon recognized from old plantation records. The second will, proof he was Augustus Harrington's son. Solomon took everything, stuffed documents into his jacket, held the black book against his chest like a shield. Then the door opened. Malcolm Vance stood in the doorway, pistol in hand. Mr. Grayson, or should I say Mr. Graves, Vance smiled, or Mr. Harrington will be very interested to know you're still alive. Solomon's mind raced. He was unarmed, trapped. His plan fell apart a second time in 4 days. Then something unexpected happened. A silver candlestick came down on Vance's head. The detective crumpled unconscious. Behind him stood a young woman with auburn hair and frightened eyes. Lily Harrington. Miss Josephine sent me to watch the door, she whispered. We need to go now. Solomon followed her out of the study, through more hidden passages, down more secret stairs. The girl moved quickly, quietly. Clearly terrified but determined, they emerged near the ballroom just as Theodore stepped onto a raised platform to address guests. Ladies and gentlemen, Theodore's voice boomed across the crowd. Thank you all for joining us for what promises to be a historic evening. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce a partnership reshaping American industry. Solomon pushed through servant crowds, ignoring confused looks, whispered questions. He had one chance, one moment. Couldn't waste it. He reached the ballroom edge just as Theodore raised his champagne glass. I present the future of American railroads, the Harrington-Morgan Alliance. Theodore Harrington. Solomon's voice cut through applause like a knife. Every head turned. 500 pairs of eyes stared at the bloody, bruised black man suddenly among them. Theodore's face paled. Guards.
Seize that man!
But Solomon was already moving. Pushed past guards, vaulted onto the platform, stood face to face with his mother's murderer. My name is Solomon Graves, he announced to the stunned crowd. Son of Bessie Graves, son of Augustus Harrington, and I have a story to tell. The ballroom fell silent. Not comfortable pause silence, but shocked silence of people confronting the incomprehensible. Solomon opened the black book. Page 1. January 1852. Bribe paid to Judge William Mercer, Augusta County, to dismiss assault charges against Augustus Harrington. Amount, $5,000, and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Page 17, March 1858. Payment to Pinkerton agents to intimidate union organizers at Harrington Railroad in Baltimore. 3 workers hospitalized, 1 worker dead. Murmurs grew louder. Page 47. March 12, 1863. Solomon's voice cracked slightly. Order given to Overseer Silas Crenshaw to eliminate the slave Bessie and her son. Method: fire. Result: Bessie killed. Son escaped. Gasps. Shocked faces. Women-covered mouths. Theodore lunged forward.
These are lies! This man is a fraud, a criminal!
But Solomon wasn't finished. Page 72, October 1878. Notes on Edward Harrington's death. Methodist staged hunting accident. Reason: to secure sole inheritance of family assets. The room erupted. Edward Harrington had been popular. Many guests knew him personally. Suggestion Theodore murdered his own brother was explosive. Theodore grabbed Solomon's jacket.
You have no proof!
This book is a forgery. Is this a forgery too? An old woman's voice silenced chaos. Everyone turned. Edith Harrington, supported by Catherine and Lily, walked slowly toward the platform. In her hand, she held a letter. This is a confession written by my husband, Augustus Harrington, on his deathbed. It confirms everything this man said. It acknowledges Solomon as his legitimate son and describes Harrington family crimes in explicit detail. She handed the letter to a man in the front row. Solomon recognized him from newspaper photographs. Joseph Pulitzer, New York World publisher. "Publish it," Edith said. "Let the world know what monsters I married into." Theodore's face twisted with rage. He pulled a knife from inside his jacket, lunged at Solomon. The blade caught Solomon's arm, drawing blood. But Solomon had survived worse. He grabbed Theodore's wrist, twisted, forced him to drop the knife. Years of physical labor made Solomon strong. Years of hatred made him ruthless. He could have killed Theodore, wanted to kill him. Every fiber screamed for blood, revenge, justice. But he looked at Theodore's pathetic, frightened face and realized something. Killing this man would make Solomon a murderer, give Theodore's defenders excuse to dismiss everything revealed, taint victory with blood. Solomon released Theodore's wrist, stepped back. "I'm not going to kill you," he said. "I'm going to do something worse. I'm going to let you live, let you watch everything you built crumble to dust. Every friend will abandon you. Every ally will betray you. Your name will become a curse. Your legacy will be shame." He turned to the stunned, silent witnesses. "That is my revenge." The aftermath was everything Solomon hoped for, and more. Joseph Pulitzer published Edith's letter and Black Book. Excerpts on the New York World front page. Within days, every American newspaper picked up the story. The Harrington scandal. The crime of the century. Theodore was arrested, charged with fraud, conspiracy, accessory to murder. His 3-month trial was the decade's most sensational legal proceeding. Witness after witness came forward. Servants who kept silent years, cheated business partners, victims who never dared speak. Theodore Harrington was convicted on all counts, sentenced to 20 years prison. He died there 3 years later from fever sweeping his cell block. Newspapers reported no one claimed his body. Harrington assets were seized, liquidated. The railroad empire sold off piecemeal. The Newport mansion went to auction. Solomon Graves, using his 30-year built fortune, bought it. 6 months after the ball, Solomon stood before Rosicliffe Manor. The building transformed. Gaudy decorations gone, ostentatious wealth displays removed. In their place, simple furnishings, practical equipment, and something never before in this house: children. 50 black children, orphans, refugees from harsh northern city streets, now lived in the mansion built with slave labor. They slept in rooms where wealthy guests once danced, ate in dining halls where champagne once flowed, learned to read and write in libraries filled with unread books. The Bessie Graves School for Negro Children opened April 1892. Solomon hired the best teachers, stocked the library with thousands of books, equipped workshops for trade learning. He created something Harringtons could never imagine, a place where descendants of the enslaved could become doctors, lawyers, teachers, leaders. Where his mother's dream could finally come true. School opening day, Solomon hung a bronze plaque by the front entrance, Fevers in memory of Bessie Graves, 1825-1863. Slave mother hero. She dreamed of a world where her son would be free. This building is that dream made real. May every child who enters these doors carry her spirit forward into the future. Solomon lived another 30 years. He saw the school grow from 50 to 500 students. He saw graduates become doctors healing the sick, lawyers fighting for justice, teachers educating the next generation. He saw the world begin to change, slowly, painfully, toward something better. He never married, never had children of his own. School students became his family. They called him Uncle Solomon, later Grandpa Solomon. They sat at his feet, listened to his stories of old days, slavery, freedom, the long road between. On his deathbed in 1922, surrounded by children and grandchildren of students he taught, Solomon spoke his final words. "Mama," he whispered, "I did it. I kept my promise." He was buried beside the oak tree where Martha hid the medallion 73 years earlier. His tombstone was simple: name and 2 dates. But beneath dates, at Solomon's request, a single sentence was carved: "The truth will make you free." The Bessie Graves School operated until 1954, merging with other institutions after Brown v. Board of Education. Over 6 decades, it educated over 10,000 students. Many became civil rights movement leaders. Some remembered the old man who founded the school, the former enslaved man with gray eyes, who brought down one of America's most powerful families. Solomon Graves never became famous. His name doesn't appear in history books. The Harrington scandal has been largely forgotten, overshadowed by subsequent wars and crises. But his legacy endures. Every black doctor healing a patient, every black lawyer winning a case, every black teacher inspiring a student. In some way, they are all Solomon Graves's children, descendants of his dream. Proof that one man's courage can change the world. The Harringtons built their empire on cruelty and greed. They believed money and power could protect them from justice forever. They were wrong. Solomon Graves proved truth cannot be buried. Justice cannot be bought. Past sins always catch those who commit them. He proved revenge isn't about destroying enemies. It's about building the world they tried to deny you. Turning pain into purpose, living so fully their memory fades while yours becomes eternal. That is the true story of the Heir of Shadows, a slave who became a millionaire, a son who avenged his mother, a man who turned a mansion of oppression into a house of hope.